Hello friends, how are we doing out there? Murders at Markov Manor releases on February 9th, 2024. With it comes hundreds of new cards, all looking for homes in your commander decks. To make things a little easier, I've compiled a list of 10 cards from this set that I think are a bit better than the others. So without further ado, let's go through the top 10 cards from Karlov Manor. One small caveat, I will only be discussing non-legendary cards. Any legendary creatures from this set are of course going to be good, as they can be the commander of your deck. So to make things a little more interesting, we're only going to be discussing cards that may find themselves at home in the 99. Let's get to it. Starting off our list at number 10 is the Aftermath Analyst. This is a 2-mana 2/3 that mills 3 cards as it enters the battlefield. You can also pay 4 mana and then sacrifice the Analyst to return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is a better Splendid Reclamation, as you have the flexibility of using the ability at instant speed. It also mills you 3, which can help add some land cards to the bin to bring back later. It's also an elf, which is not entirely super relevant in most cases. It does lend itself pretty well to Kindred synergies if you choose to go that route. I would even like to say that this would make a pretty good PDH commander. It gives you a clear route for a fun land deck that looks to sacrifice your lands for value, and then use the Analyst to return all of them to the battlefield. Remember, this also can recur fetch lands. At number 9, we have Buried in the Garden, a 4-mana aura enchantment. It enchants a land, but when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent you don't control until Buried in the Garden leaves the battlefield. In addition, whenever the enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of any color. This is such a unique hybrid of cards. We have your classic removal piece, a la Oblivion Ring, that exiles a non-land permanent, but this also comes with some mana ramp tacked on. This gives it double value and a tremendous amount of utility. Green and white decks are pretty well known for being heavy on enchantments, being one of the better color combinations for Enchantress decks, and this hits all the criteria that an Enchantress deck would want. Leyline of the Guildpact snags our number 8 spot as a 4-mana enchantment. If it's in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Each non-land permanent you control is all colors, and all lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. This card is a lot of fun in 5-color decks. It gives you a very clean way to fix your mana, and while giving your non-land permanents all colors might seem a little underwhelming, we did recently get a commander deck called Painbow not too long ago that wants your cards to be 5 colors. What's interesting about this card is that it follows the same design as the Ley Lines, where it gives you the option of a pre-game action, starting the game with it on the battlefield. This is amazing, as doing so would immediately fix all of your mana. I also really like that you can pay 1 green mana instead of the other 4 pips. A 5-color deck like Kenrith will really like having the flexibility that this card will offer. Barbed Servitor is a 4-mana 1/1 construct with Indestructible, and it takes our number 7 slot. When it enters the battlefield, suspect it. Suspecting it gives it menace and renders it unable to block. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Whenever the Barbed Servitor is dealt combat damage, target opponent loses that much life. I'm a huge fan of these kinds of cards. Some of you may remember the card Stuffy Doll from ages past, who had Indestructible, and any damage that it took was also dealt to 1 target opponent that you chose upon it entering the battlefield. What's even better about this card is not only do you get to choose which opponent will take the damage each time its ability is triggered, but you also get to draw a card whenever it connects with an opponent. This presents your opponents with a very difficult decision. You either block this thing, which because it has menace means at least 3 creatures need to be in front of it, and then they take the damage equal to the total damage it took from its blockers, or they let that 1 measly point of combat damage through, but let you draw a card and lose 1 life. They might be keen to letting you draw a card for a few turns, but after a while, that value that you get from drawing card after card will accrue, and it will become a bit of a problem. Case of the Stashed Skeleton, our 6th slot, is a 2-mana case enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 2/1 black skeleton creature token and suspect it. To solve the case, you need to control no suspected skeletons. If the case is unsolved and the conditions are met, you can solve the case at the beginning of your end step. Once the case is solved, you can pay 2 mana, sacrifice this case, and then search your library for a card and add it to your hand. Activate only at sorcery speed. This is an amazing card. I think it's one of my favorites from the set. See, Commander has a lot of expensive staples, namely the optimal tutor spells. Some of the best tutors are ones like Demonic Tutor, and those unfortunately cost a pretty penny. While it's a little bit more roundabout than Demonic Tutor, this card essentially does the same thing, but it has quite a bit more added to it. This can even tie into your deck's theme, being a much more synergistic and unique inclusion than simply jamming in Demonic Tutor. At number 5, we have the Persuasive Interrogators, which cost 6 mana for a 5/6 Gorgon Detective. When it enters the battlefield, you investigate, which creates you a clue token. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, target opponent gets 2 poison counters. A player with 10 or more poison counters loses the game. This is savage. Murders at Kamehameha Manor introduced dozens of ways of creating clue tokens, and there have been hundreds since their original introduction back in 2016. Clues have also been predominantly an artifact-heavy card type, meaning there's no shortage of means to sacrifice your clues. Poison counters are also related to infect and toxic decks, and so if you choose to be a monster and include some of those strategies in your deck, it will give you additional ways to increase your opponent's poison counters. A card like Tamio's Journal not only creates a clue token at each of your upkeeps, but you can then sacrifice 3 to tutor for any card, which if you do so while the interrogators are out, you can then distribute a total of 6 poison counters. That's more than halfway to taking a player out, meaning that this thing hits the battlefield and isn't on your side, you'd better watch out. Aurelia's Vindicator comes in at number 4 and is a 4/2 angel for 4 mana. That's not a bit. It has Flying, Lifelink, and Ward 2. It also has Disguise, which lets you cast it as a face-down 2/2 creature for 3 mana. You can then pay X, 3, and 1 white mana to pay for its Disguise cost at any time to turn it face up. Paying the Disguise cost and flipping this card does not use the stack, and so it cannot be responded to with things like counterspells. But it does have an ability of its own upon it flipping face up, where it lets you exile up to X other target creatures from the battlefield or creature cards from the graveyards. When it leaves the battlefield, return those exiled cards to their owner's hands. This is such a unique and powerful removal piece. You can funnel as much mana as you'd like into the X part of the mana cost, and then remove an equal number from the graveyard or the battlefield, which can be used to great effect. If you flip the Vindicator as you attack, you can take out blockers, helping get damage through. You can exile cards from the graveyard that present an issue, such as Wonder, that'll give your opponent's creatures flying. The subtle upside to the final clause is when the Vindicator leaves the battlefield, those exiled cards do not return to the zone they were in before being exiled, so if you remove your opponent's creatures from the battlefield, they will have to be recast. On the flip side, you can also use this as a bit of a recursion spell, exiling a creature card or 2 that you have sitting in your graveyard that you kind of need back in your hand, and so this is a great option if your deck has little access to graveyard recursion. I'm going to put Assassin's Trophy at number 3 because it is technically a reprint. That being said, it's probably the best reprint in the set. For 2 mana, you get an instant. Destroy target permanent that an opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land and put it onto the battlefield. This is universal removal in Golgari colors and is perhaps one of my favorite pieces of removal, period. See, it doesn't state non-land as a restriction on what it can destroy, and so this can even go after your opponent's lands. Monster. This does give them a basic land after the fact, but in some decks, their basic land count might be low, meaning they may fail to find a card to put into play. Meaning, you got to remove something valuable of theirs, and they get no recuperation on their loss. At number 2, we have Doorkeeper Thrall, a 1/2 for 2 mana with both flash and flying. Artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. This is mean, and while I might have some reservations in putting what is essentially another stacks piece this high on the list, I'm sure many of you out there will agree with me stating how powerful this card is going to be. The vast majority of cards in Commander will have some form of enter the battlefield ability, and this simply shuts those abilities off altogether. This can be a tremendous hindrance on the game, though if you choose to include this in your deck, first of all, shame on you, but you should understand this will impact you as well. Build around it if you choose to make it a primary game plan so that you are impacted the least. It also having flash means that it can be used as a response to an opponent casting a card with an enter the battlefield ability, as it will resolve and exist on the battlefield before your opponent's card enters the battlefield and does its thing. At number 1, we have none other than the Crime Novelist. This is 3 mana for a 1/3 Goblin Bard. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on the Crime Novelist and add 1 red mana. I know a lot of people don't like Dockside Extortionist in Commander, even I've cut him out of a lot of my decks just because he's super powerful. I'm super glad he got himself a boyfriend who's going to write storied accounts of his piratey adventures now. See, here's the thing, when you use a treasure token, you sacrifice it to make 1 mana. Well, that will trigger the Crime Novelist, letting you put a +1/+1 counter onto the Novelist, and then you add another red mana. You will effectively be getting 2 mana out of your treasure tokens and an arbitrarily large Goblin Bard. I haven't quite gotten the chance to tinker with it yet, but this would make an absolutely powerful Fling Commander in Pauper EDH if you can put enough treasure production into it. There is quite a bit out there, and I might explore that in the coming weeks. But I digress. This is giving treasure tokens just one more kick in the pants, and I find it almost funny that they gave us this card in the same set that they gave clue tokens some well-needed support. See, this will trigger whenever you sacrifice any kind of artifact, be it treasure, clue, food, map, myrrh, blood, what have you. The added utility to sacrifice artifacts will also play nicely into a number of decks, such as Slobod or Duretti. I think this might be one of the strongest uncommon cards that we've gotten in this set, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the cards from Mario Manor? Are there ones that you think should have been on this list? Let's discuss it in the comments below. What cards are you looking forward to most from getting from Manor? I'm beyond hyped to begin testing the Crime Novelist, the Persuasive Investigators, just to see what I can brew up. If you enjoyed this video, likes and shares are some of the best ways to help support this channel. If you're new here and find the Commander videos are doing something for you, feel free to subscribe so you never miss a beat. And as always, thank you for spending your time here, and I'll catch you all next video.